Example 2. Edna leaves the trailhead at dawn to hike 12 miles toward the lake, where her friend Maria is camping. At the same time, Maria starts her hike toward the trailhead. Edna is walking uphill, so she averages only 1.5 miles per hour, while Maria averages 2.5 miles per hour walking downhill. When and where will they meet? First thing we need to do is define our variables for time and for distance from the trailhead. And then we're going to write a system of equations to model the situation. And then we'll solve the system by creating a table and finding the values of the variables that make both equations true. And then we'll graph it. So what we are looking at is these two ladies who are hiking, and we're given the distance that they are from each other, right? Edna leaves from the trailhead to hike 12 miles toward a lake. And then Maria is starting her hike at the lake and walking toward the trailhead. And then Edna is walking 1.5 miles per hour, while Maria averages 2.5 miles per hour. So first thing we need to do is define our variables for time and distance. So for time, we will use X. Put that over here. Oh dear. So for time, we'll use X, and for distance, we'll use Y. Okay. So we're going to write a system of two equations. We need to write two different equations, one for Maria and the other one for Edna. So Maria is starting her hike toward the trailhead, and she is walking 2.5 miles downhill. So we can think about her distance. Her Y is going to be, the Y again is the distance. So her distance, it starts out at 12. She's 12 miles from the trailhead. And then for every hour that she walks, that's your time, every hour. So that's time in hours. For every hour that she walks, she'll be 2.5 miles closer to the trailhead. So it's going to be 12 minus 2.5x. So this is in intercept form, right? 12 is our y-intercept, and negative 2.5 is our slope. And then for Edna, it's similar, but for her, she starts out at 0. And then for every hour that she walks, she'll be 1.5 miles closer. So the equation there is 1.5x. We have 0 as a y-intercept and 1.5 as the slope. So there's our system of equations. Now we're going to solve this system both by graphing and by creating a table. So let's start by creating the table. So I'm going to write y, and then I'll write x. I'm sorry, I'm going to write it the other way. I'm going to write x first, and then I'll write Maria's y, so y sub m, and then Edna's y, so y sub e. And I'll create a table so we can figure out when and where they'll meet. So we'll start by plugging in 0 for x. If I plug in 0 for x into Maria's equation, I get y equals 12 minus 2.5 times 0, which is just 12 minus 0, which turns out to just be 12. And then for Edna, I start out at 0. I plug 0 in for x, so I get 1.5 times 0, which is 0, right? And that makes sense. When we're starting this problem, Maria is 12 miles from the trailhead, and Edna is at the trailhead, 0 miles away. And after 1 hour, right, Maria gets 2.5 miles closer. So I subtract 2.5 from 12. So I get 9.5. And then for Edna, I'm going to add 1.5, right? I'm multiplying 1.5 times 1. So I get 1.5. So they're getting closer, but they're not quite there yet. After 2 hours, I plug 2 in for x, or I just subtract 2.5 from the previous number. So 9.5 minus 2.5 is 7. And then 1.5 plus another 1.5 is 3. Then after 3 hours, right, I subtract another 2.5. So that gets me down to 4.5. And then I add another 1.5 here. So that gets me again to 4.5. And I can see, oh, okay, at 3 hours, they've both traveled 4.5 miles, right? So at 3 hours or 4.5 miles from the trailhead is where they're going to meet. That's going to be our solution. Let's see that on a graph as well. So I'll draw my coordinate plane. I don't have any negatives in here, so I don't really need my, I only really need my first quadrant. And then, like I said, in Maria's equation, my 12 is my y-intercept. Let me count by 2, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So 12 is my y-intercept. And then negative 2.5 is my slope. So I'm going to go down 2.5 over 1. Down 2.5 over 1. Is that right? Down 2.5 over 1. That looks right to me. Then 2.5 over 1, right? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that I was counting by 2s. So down 2.5 would be more like here. There we go. And then down another 2.5 would be right here. That makes more sense. And then again down to about here. And then down another 2.5 would be 2, so right there. And that gives me a pretty good representation of my graph for Maria. And then for Edna, the y-intercept is at 0. And then her slope is positive 1.5. We'll go over to about there. And then to here. And then right around there. And that'll be my graph for Edna. And I can see that they cross right there. And that point is at 1, 2, 3. So 3 on the x-axis. And then up to 2, 4.5. So 3, 4.5. And again, our x is our time. So they met at 3 hours. And the y is the distance. So at 4.5 miles past the trailhead.